Do we really all need to go to university? As thousands of university students return to study, I want to ask whether we need to go to university at all. Certainly some people do. When I went to university, many of my friends were first generation university students. Today, the expectation is that most children will go from school to university. Blair's government changed the paradigm. The Tories had phased out grants and turned them into student loans. But in 1997, people were leaving university with maybe £12,000 worth of debt. That felt like a lot, and I knew people who never paid them off. They waited until they expired when you didn't earn enough money. Oh, no such luck today. Within a decade, they were paying £10,000 a year for tuition. Add accommodation, food and books, and even a hermit walks out of university with £40,000 debt. You don't go to university to just study. It's a much more holistic experience. I had a drink with my friend recently. He's a plumber. And he was talking about his son picking a university. And I said 90% of people whose plumbing you do earn less money than you, pay more tax than you, and have to be a mortgage slave to their employer for their entire working life. Has he considered plumbing? I'm not saying he should be a plumber, a plasterer, or any of those trades, but they're very underrated. It's snobbishness, in many ways. Well, the workplace has changed. There's an argument that there's more technology, there's a need for more education. But do universities give us this technological education? When I speak to young adults, they know how to watch short videos and play games, and some even know that you should restart a computer when it has issues. But did they watch the IT crowd, or do they actually understand it? Do they understand the file structure of a website that they're surfing by looking at the pages? I don't think they do. I don't believe that graduates are technically proficient in IT. Certainly not art ones. I believe they're comfortable using technology. They were anyway. This didn't come from university. This came from being young and alive in the modern world. There's the argument that each specialism is more detailed than it was before. And there is some truth to this. Study architecture. There are a dozen different specialisms ranging from a technical artist to the maths whiz. I use Photoshop quite a bit, and I know my area quite well. But I know a photographer and a graphic designer, and there's probably 20% overlap in the areas we each know. There's much more depth. Well, for technical degrees like engineering, I buy that university is imperative. For degrees like law, I buy that it's foundational. For drama, I buy that experience and guidance build skills. If you want to be a lecturer, I buy that you need a degree in that subject. You teach the level below what you've studied. Now, I worked in an office and we were purchased by an American company. Within weeks, we were told it's a degree-only workplace. Great. You want to be the receptionist and answer the phone and say hello to people when they come? Got to have a degree to do that. Well, with all these degree candidates, did the quality rise? No. Were they more technical? No. Did they commonly mention their degrees if they'd been out of university for more than 2 years? No. I interviewed a candidate with a degree, an English language course from a major university, and a mini MBA from a very respectable red brick university. The interview took a long time because he barely spoke English. Now, how had he got a postgraduate qualification from a red brick university when he couldn't speak a coherent sentence? Now, I found such a breadth of capability and such a breadth of degrees, but I struggled to find good candidates. My team had to be creative and technical, so to fill the team, I got an exemption from the degree rule, and I ended up with a team where people either had no degree or a master's degree. I like to walk and to sightsee, and this means I go to university towns, and I sometimes even walk through their grounds. There are universities which look like a sixth form college, and there are universities that feel like pillars of academia. On the day of the awful stabbings in Nottingham, I saw two random students supposedly picked off the street, but I was genuinely surprised how eloquently they spoke. My issue with university is it's become a tick box. Got a degree? Tick. Haven't got a degree? Goodbye. That's not what education is about. I believe education is different to being qualified. An educated person has a rounded education. I think, for example, they understand the fundamentals of English, maths and science. They speak a foreign language well enough to have a basic conversation. They play an instrument well enough to play a tune they like. They have a broad appreciation of art, history, and the like. Maybe they play a sport to a level that maybe not competitive, but they can take part in a club. Well, I can tell you straight out of the gate, I fail at least one of these tests. You're watching YouTube. It's fair to assume you're watching 20 other people talking this week. And I'd argue that the majority of these don't have a qualification in the subject they talk about. So why do you listen to them? In the workplace, we would ignore these people. You listen because they don't need a degree to be worth listening to. Don't worry, I do have a degree, so you can hit that subscribe button. So, do we all need degrees? I think we need a degree if it adds value to the student, especially when you have to pay for it. When we try to send everyone to university, we have to lower the bar. So the top quarter never worry about the money they borrowed. It's all gravy. The next quartile spend a decade paying for it. The next quartile are profit centres for the university. And the final quartile don't go to university. Plenty of universities offer good degrees, but how many people's lives are burned out in service of second-rate academics at souped-up sixth form colleges? I'd argue we need to reduce the number of subjects and institutions, increase non-degree education after A-level, and see how much this allows us to write off student debts for those who will contribute. I saw an interesting idea recently of reversing taxation so that the first few years out of university have a bigger tax-free allowance, which slowly decreases over time. This would allow students to clear their debt, move on with their lives, build foundations. We live in a consumer society where we need people to grow their potential, put a roof over their head, and consume the products and services which we make. We're in a generation where many are not as well off as their parents, and our children and grandchildren are worse off than we are. Only a paradigm shift can change this, and just sending more people to do degrees which they don't need, that they spend the rest of their life paying for, is not the right thing. It's not right for society, and it's not for them. It's education as a moneymaker.